I want to be respectful of everyone's time, so we can go ahead and get this started. We are very lucky this morning to have a couple of great folks from Northwest Energy speak to us about some of their programs. We have John Hines, who is the Vice President of Supply and Montana Government Affairs for Northwest, and Howard, and I hope I do not ruin this, Howard Sherbum.
You are good.
Sweet. Manager of Community Relations. So I'm just going to turn it over to them, let them kind of talk about the issues that are of importance and that we can partner with local communities on with Northwestern, and then let's do a good round of Q&A for them.
Kelly, thanks. I'm actually going to just turn it over to John Hines.
Oh, I was going to let you do some programs if you wanted, but talk about stuff going on, but that's fine. Way to throw the curveball at me right away, Howard. So I guess, Kelly, I'd turn it back to you and say that we're really happy and pleased and thankful that we have the opportunity to come and talk with your folks. The main issue that I want to talk with you all about today. Oh, how do I share screen? Let's see.
At the bottom of your screen, you should have a share button. Do you see that?
Yep. Uh-huh. And just hit screen, and then there will be 3 different screens come up, I suspect. Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
Perfect. Thank you. So main issue that we want to talk with you about today is there's for a variety of reasons, and be happy to talk about a lot of the underlying drivers through a Q&A, but we could get bogged down on that for quite a while just by itself. But the supply costs for customers, businesses, cities have been going up dramatically over the last 6 months. They've come down a little bit, but from a budgeting perspective, it's certainly going to affect pretty much everyone in the state of Montana, and not just those who take power from Northwestern, or service from Northwestern, but I suspect everyone will see some upward pressure. Bottom line is that, supply costs make up about 1/2 of a customer's rate. So if, say, the full rate is 13.5 cents per kilowatt hour, supply makes up about 6.75 cents. And the other pieces are just transmission, distribution, and a little bit of admin costs. But it's a big percentage, and the costs that I'm talking about are going to be fairly significant as well. And so that's basically what I want to talk with you about today, and answer questions if you have any. Let me see here. Going to the, oops, it doesn't do it that way. Just go that way. So specifically, I've talked about how the costs are going up, and the primary reason why the costs for Northwestern's customers are going up is that we have to go out and acquire a substantial amount of power and or natural gas from market. And, that's distinct from owning all of your own gas wells or owning all of your generation. And this is we don't want to be in this position, but prior PSC policies have implemented this direction. There was a strong preference for reliance on market, and it certainly at times provided some benefit. But when you see upward movement in supply costs, and certainly the volatility that we're seeing, I'd argue that it's very detrimental from a affordability perspective to our customers. And I'll also talk a little bit that it's detrimental from a reliability perspective. And that's because we've had a substantial amount of generation in state be retired. Montana used to have the luxury, if you will, of having a lot of excess generation in the state. And like any type of commodity, if you had to move it out of state, it cost money. Just like if you were growing a product, if you have to ship cattle out of the state, you've got to pay for the transportation costs. Well, if we all of a sudden didn't have enough cattle in the state to feed us, well, then we have to pay the fuel costs, for example, or the transportation costs to move that meat into the state. The same concept holds with generation. We have to pay generation transmission costs to move the power from out of state into the state. But unlike just putting it on a truck, like with the meat analogy, the transmission system has very clear limitations. And the transmission system wasn't built in Montana with the concept of bringing a lot of power into the state. It was built with the concept of moving a lot of power out of the state. But again, because of the Corrette plant retirement, Colstrip 1 and 2 retirement, we're now having to use the transmission system in a way it wasn't designed, and it's becoming more difficult and very much more costly to move that power in. But there's such clear limitations, one on the transmission side, and there's also clear limitations on the availability of generation outside of the state. It's caused us a substantial amount of concern about actually during peak weather events, whether it's super hot or super cold, to be able to bring enough power into the state to serve our customers. And we saw that last February, where we were relying on almost 2/3 of our total generation needs from outside of the state. And if anything would have happened to a transmission system at that point in time, portions of the state would have been in rolling blackouts. Couple other points just for your reference. Northwestern does not earn any money on market purchases. So while you'll see these costs increasing substantially over the next year, we're not having any earnings on that. That's just a direct pass through. If gas costs $2 a decatherm, we charge our customers $2 a decatherm. Electricity costs, $100 a megawatt hour. That's all that's passed through. So again, those costs are passed directly through to our customers, residential and businesses and cities. So now I just want to give you a little bit more detail on what's going on from the pricing perspective. And this chart here, I'm just going to give you some charts and just to show you over time. So it basically runs from 2016 to where we are right now to July 22, but also our forecast for what's going to be happening into the future. And I'll be fairly blunt, and I have a lot of economics and math background, but forecasts are generally not real precise. But the empirical numbers are what's happened in the past, and it shows you that escalation. So in July of 19, we're basically at a very low price for natural gas. And ACO is just a trading hub that is where we buy a lot of our natural gas, probably about 80% of it, and it's located in Canada, just north of Montana. So we're taking advantage of a lot of the excess gas, what used to be excess quantity of gas in Canada. So we're around 50 cents a decatherm, which is extremely cheap, July in 2019. Then you can just flash cut to July 22, and we're up to over $6 a decatherm. That's just straight market pricing, and that change is going to be passed directly into people's pocketbooks. This is the other main connection point that we buy gas, and this is the Colorado Interstate Gas, or CIG, and that's just in southeastern Montana. We're able to connect into the Williston Basin, Wyoming, Colorado area, and we buy a substantial amount of gas there. But you see the same sort of trend there. CIG gas typically isn't as low at any point in time as ACO gas, but nonetheless, you see a very sharp curve increase over the last year and a half. This is the futures trading slide that I wanted. So although I acknowledge the lack of precision associated with forecasting, this does show how we've been forecasting natural gas for July and August. The date you see below is the forecast changes based upon a lot of conditions on each date. But generally the trend has been pretty high, and now until about 3 weeks ago. And now we're assuming that price is going to go down a little bit. And just a couple of reasons why, just to help you gain a little bit more understanding, is that one of the, gas is a commodity that can be stored. People store it in what we call underground storage areas. And that's not just in Montana, but throughout the United States. And there was a lot of usage of gas this last winter. And usually you're able to start refilling that gas in spring because people aren't heating their homes or heating their businesses. It's that transition season. And if you are using gas, you're using a very little of it. But we had very much colder weather throughout the United States. And thus we weren't able to take that gas and put it into storage. We were having to use it to serve our load at that point in time. And at the same time, we had really cold weather eating up gas storage. We were forecasting quite a bit hotter summer. And that gas then goes to be used in electric generation to provide air conditioning load for customers. The main piece is that there's a huge difference in pricing right now between the United States and Europe with all of the fallout from the Russia-Ukrainian war. We're paying around $5 to $6 a decatherm. Just that's the same measurement term that we use throughout the world, while Europe is paying between $30 and $35 a decatherm. That price differential was so huge that rather than people who owned a lot of gas in the United States, rather than putting it into the United States, was actually liquefying it and sending it over to Europe on ships. And, it was a much better profit margin for them to do that than to just have it be used in the United States for its own consumption. Fortunately, from June 13th on, the pricing has gone down a little bit. And the main reason, everyone knows the high snowpack flooding events that Montana had a couple of weeks ago caused some devastation throughout the state. But on the other hand, it did increase our hydro system's fuel quite a bit. And so we were able to generate a lot more electricity from our hydros than we had anticipated. And there was a significant explosion down in Houston on a major LNG facility that put it out of order, which immediately, since that gas couldn't be liquefied and sent to Europe, it was then turned back into internal United States usage, and it lowered the price significantly as well. This is extremely difficult slide to see, but just wanted to give you an idea of how volatile and how much this is the Mid-Columbia. That's a trading hub where we buy and sell electricity. If we have too much electricity, we'll sell it based upon this pricing, and too little, we're out buying it. And the intent of this slide, it's super busy, I know that, but just to give you a feel for how much pricing has changed over the last year and a half. As an example, in May, just go to May where there's a blue number there. 2016, we're buying electricity for $14.58 a megawatt hour. This year, for that same month, we're buying at $61, so 400% increase in electricity prices. And you'll see that throughout the list here over time, how much electricity prices have been increasing. And this is a similar graph to what we do on the electric side. Again, this is showing pretty high increase. $175 is extremely high. As a reference point, we generate power from Colstrip at around $28, $29 a megawatt hour. And when we don't have enough power from that facility or any of our other facilities, we're out on the open market buying it. And when we were buying it in May, it was at $175 a megawatt hour. For those prices, it's pretty unprecedented. And they have fallen again, in part because in the summertime, a lot of the generation comes from natural gas prices, and we just discussed those prices have been going down. This slide is intended to show a little bit different. So I've shown how electric prices have been going up substantially. The whole curve, if you will, has been moving upward. What this is intended to do is show the amount of volatility. So not only are the prices going up, but they're going up and then coming down and going up and coming down. So it's really difficult from going out and trying to buy electricity to know what the right timing is associated with it. A lot of it is speculation. Some of it has some fundamental drivers, but we've been looking at prices over $400 a megawatt hour, and down to less than 100 from peak. In other words, the maximum price that we've been seeing, with the average pricing being around 21, 22, what we saw in 2021, just a year prior to it. So that's just a really rough, quick overview of trying to give you a little more visual feel for the type of pricing that translates directly into affordability and directly impacts the customers and your own bills themselves. This is, pricing is a real serious issue when I look at what we can do to make our product the most affordable. But this is actually much more of a concern for me. It's one thing for prices to be high. It's another thing to not have enough electricity available to serve customers, especially when it's really cold or really hot. And even in the summer, it's not so simple as just saying, well, customers won't be able to turn on their air conditioning for a while. We have hospitals, we have people on oxygen, all of those sort of things that can cause really substantial effects, negative effects on customers. And certainly in the wintertime, it can have catastrophic effects depending on the severity of the cold. As an example, in Houston, when they had the blackouts a year and a half ago because of lack of generation, and it's in a different market than that we trade in, but nonetheless, they're seeing the same effects. There's probably $4 to $5 billion of economic damage done, as well as 100 deaths or so, and that was only temperatures in the 20s, certainly not the 20s belows that we see up here. Granted, they're not as prepared, but nonetheless, if you're not able to heat a dwelling, you're going to have significant damage. And even if you have natural gas or propane, if you don't have electricity, the reality is you can't run your propane or you can't run your natural gas heater. And so it's really necessary for any type of heating product. I guess I didn't go through the numbers here. I apologize. So the red is a negative number. So, when we look at in July of 22, we knew we're short 150 megawatts, and that's out of a 800 megawatt average system and a 1400 megawatt peak system. That pink color right next to it, though, is if we would have a peak event in July of this year, we'd have been short we would be short 500 megawatts, and that's a third of our total load. And going back to one of my previous slides when I talked about, so what, we don't have enough available in Montana, and so we'd have to go outside of Montana to buy that power or some of that power, and then there's transmission limitations. It's the bottom line here is Montana has been, they've had the luxury of being surplus power for quite some time. And so long as you go and turn on the switch, you don't think about this product. We've been sounding the alarm to our commission for quite some time. They've been very slow to respond, and we are going to have to be taking measures sooner rather than later, because we definitely don't want to have the repercussions that accompany a blackout. This slide is designed to show or illustrate even more the status of our electric generation portfolio compared to all the other investor-owned utilities in the Pacific Northwest. You know, Vista is based out of Spokane, Portland, Oregon. Idaho serves all of Idaho. Rocky Mountain Power serves a portion of Utah. Pacific Core serves Washington, Oregon, and some of Idaho. Puget serves primarily the Bellevue, Seattle, Washington area. And this chart here shows in the, I'm kind of colorblind, so the brownish color, it shows how much generation each of these utilities have available to serve their load. And then the dashed line up above shows how much do they have under long-term PPAs, power purchase arrangements. So basically you go out and contract for long-term to get power. And Avista has the most amount. They have over 100% of their needs just in their own generation. The bottom line is they have around 130% available to serve load. So that's not only available, but if something happens to one of their generators or their contract isn't able to be met, they still have enough surplus to be able to accommodate their needs. Northwestern, and to be clear, this is not where Northwestern wants to be. This is because of previous regulatory actions, including the Montana Consumer Council. We have been rebuffed numerous times at this, but we have around 55%, 54% only. Can again contrast that to where Vista or even the utility closest to it, so that's Puget Sound, they're at 76%. We are substantially more reliant on the market than any other utility. And we're also at the end of the road. In other words, we only have a couple of mechanisms for transmission to work, where these other utilities are located in more central areas where they have access to different markets, greater access than we do. This slide to me is probably the most concerning of all of them. So just to kind of sum up my reliability concerns, there have been recent rolling blackouts in California. There's certainly been blackouts in the Midwest. Montana has been fortunate so far. The SPP is a regional entity that covers, I think, over 20 states in the Midwest. They basically are the entity that runs that market. And we all know how great a threat cybersecurity is these days. They just came out with a statement the other day that they have greater concerns about being able to meet customer load than they do from cybersecurity. And that's even with the Ukrainian-Russian conflict going on. Another key point takeaway is we are dependent upon outside generation and thus transmission to serve our needs. And transmission access is becoming more scarce. This next bullet, I think, is, so we have a concern for our overall portfolio in Montana, but we have a specific concern that's greater even in the Billings area. And it's transmission constrained. And in the past, that wasn't a big deal because we had a whole bunch of surplus generation. But the Corrette coal plant was closed recently. That was 150 megawatts. And coal strip 1 and 2 was closed a couple of years ago. That's 850 megawatts again. And that's more than our average need for the entire state. So that area has been very much of concern to us. That's one of the reasons why we've been building the Yellowstone gas plant. It's critical to be able to ensure the lights to stay on in that area, but we continue to be under attack and trying to build a gas plant in Montana. And there's a recent lawsuit in Billings that Judge Moses was hearing, brought by the Sierra Club and MEIC, that's trying to stop the plant from being developed. And it's, you know, I'm a Montana kid, and I want Montanans to do well, but Montana at times is its own worst enemy. At the same time that we've been running into such headwinds in Montana, I've been able to build 2 gas plants in South Dakota, and we have excess generation there, a reserve margin. So, you know, other states are much more proactive at trying to do something than Montana is. And then just sum it up, give you a little bit of customer impacts of what we're seeing. This year's electric rates will likely increase by about $30 million. And that's just to collect the additional costs associated with purchasing market from last year. We forecast what the cost was going to be. The actual contracts came in above that, and so now we need to collect that. And then we're looking at around another 68 million increase just because of this year's forecast. So we're looking at $100 million more from customers with no change in service. And on the gas side, it's a similar thing, 5.5 million to recover last year's costs for natural gas that were under collected. And then we're expecting around $42 million of increases this year due to the increase. Two final takeaways. We have no influence over market prices. We're what we call a market taker. We're a relatively small dog or in a really big group of dogs, and we do have control, and this is kind of my final takeaway for you. We do have control on whether we want to be at the mercy of the market, which is unique among, I would argue, probably 48 out of the 50 states. And, I think that we can and should be making policy changes, but also be supportive of some of the things like the gas plant being built. And with that, Kelly, I'm more than happy to answer questions or however you'd like to do these next steps.
Perfect. Thanks, John. That was super interesting as always, and I know great information for our local governments. We end up a lot of times being the first place to hear complaints and concerns from our residents. So, Ashley, do you see anything in the chat?
I don't, Kelly.
Okay. If folks have any questions, you can go ahead and unmute and ask directly, or feel free, if you're not comfortable with that, to put a question in the chat. I guess maybe I can start the conversation going with a question to you about what steps, if any, do you see our local governments being able to take to help you in stabilizing our energy supply?
Yeah, there's a lot of, local governments have the advantage of meeting with their local leaders, local legislators on a very regular basis, especially given the non-legislative time periods, that you can meet them for coffee. And, your concerns, I think, regardless of where people are on the political spectrum, need to be provided. And it's not simplistic. And my biggest concern is that you can't make these changes overnight. But first and foremost, the reality of it is we need to have what we call generation that we can turn on and off, and not just renewables. We have actually more renewables in our portfolio than almost any other investor-owned utility in the United States. We have more renewables in our portfolio than California utilities do, and we have a lot less natural gas than California utilities do. So what does that mean? That we're more reliant on the weather or the sun to provide power than these other utilities are. And they're also able, with a natural gas plant, you can turn it on and off whenever you need it. And I just was curious, just looked 2 days ago, we're in a heat wave in Montana, not a huge heat wave, but it's a pretty significant one. And we have 450 megawatts of wind on our system. We have 220 megawatts of coal strip, and we have about 320 megawatts right now of 300 megawatts, I'd say, of natural gas. And we were turning on and off natural gas on like 10, 15 minute intervals to accommodate the wind. We had zero wind at 8 a.m. We went up to like 300 megawatts of wind at our 3 o'clock p.m. By 3:30, it was down to zero. And by 4 o'clock, it was over 350 megawatts. So this flexible type of generation is necessary. You can't meet those needs with batteries. And so it's a necessity. And we're frankly very concerned about this Yellowstone plant, that if it gets stopped and and something additional happens at Colstrip, everyone knows that West Coast is trying to shut down Colstrip. If we lose this gas plant and Colstrip, it's just going to be extremely difficult in the short to medium term to serve the Billings area load. And it's not just the city of Billings, it's the whole outlying area. And that load constitutes about 25% of Northwestern's total load, to give you the magnitude.
Do you have a specific ask to the legislature or to the PSC that you guys are pursuing?
We're still putting some of those specific asks together. We'd be happy to share with you. In part, it depends on what Judge Moses' ruling is. For those people in the Billings area, I'd be extremely concerned if he's been asked by the Sierra Club and MEIC to vacate or remand back our air quality permit that's already been issued and which we started construction of the plant under. One of their concerns was that they didn't include the effects of carbon throughout the world from the emissions of this plant. Montana statute precludes that from happening. And so DEQ, following the law, didn't do that. I think one of the issues was the constitutional issue of a right to a healthful environment. What people oftentimes frequently forget to read is the second clause of that constitutional phrase. And they also, roughly paraphrased, have a right to good economic welfare in the state. So there's supposed to be a balancing act placed there. So we may be trying to make it more clear in the legislature what these permits require. And hopefully, this, regardless of the ruling, it will be challenged, I think, from either side up to the Supreme Court. But what we're most concerned about and what is trying to be accomplished with this litigation is delay. And delay is not in our customers' best interest, nor is it ours, but it is from people who don't want to see new natural gas development.
Anybody else want to join into this very interesting conversation and a little bit frightening? I think you've bowled them over, John.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, well, we'll give them a couple more minutes to jump in if they want. But in the meantime, I do want to thank you for taking this time to walk through this issue with us and make sure people understand what you guys are facing, what we're facing as Montanans.
Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate the opportunity. Hope you guys have a good weekend and may stay safe and only halfway warm.
Absolutely, you too.
All
Keep
right.
that green out there.
There we go. All right, thanks.
Thank you. So if we turn to the issue of updates on what the league and MACO are working on, I am not sure how many folks are on here from the counties, but I'm going to assume there's several of you. So I wanted to just touch on a couple of things that are happening. First of all, we have the IIJA infrastructure bill is, pushing out grant opportunities pretty much every day. Most of them to this point have been either very, very specific to body cameras for law enforcement. But some of them are pretty big buckets of money for things like transportation. And so we've been trying to push those out through the bulletin. We keep receiving updates from National League of Cities and the National Association of Counties. So that has been very helpful if you're on this call and you're not getting those kinds of updates, just let us know. We'll make sure that you are in the loop. And you can also go, I know, to our website, and I'm assuming Mako has the same up on their website. I know Karen's on for Mako, so if she wanted to speak to what resources they have, happy to let her jump in. And then I wanted to point out that I mean, we've been talking with the league folks, cities and towns pretty extensively about the work that we're doing on the land use working group and some of the ideas coming out of the legislature in terms of preempting local governments, land use regulations, including subdivision regulations and zoning. And we just all got word either yesterday or today about the governor's executive order on the housing task force. And it looks, and we have, I believe it's Commissioner Butcher is on there for the counties, and Mayor Kelly is on representing the cities and towns. But I think that is going to be a conversation that we're all going to want to pay attention to. I'm happy to send out the executive order to everyone to make sure they have that. But the initial whereases in the executive order are aimed very specifically at local government regulations and looking to streamline local government regulations. So take a look at that and be ready to kind of talk about the role of land use regulations in your community and how it's used and why, and how that relates to your ability to handle infrastructure-wise that population and densities under zoning and subdivision review. I know I have Thomas on, and I think Alan Holz is still on, and well, I know Ashley's on from Local Government Center, and Karen's on from Mako. So if any of you want to jump in with updates from your organizations, what you're working on, opportunities coming up.
Kelly, I'll just put a plug in for the municipal summits. The partners will be in Missoula on Monday, Kalispell on Tuesday, the 19th, and in Great Falls on July 27th, I believe. And those are rounding out our municipal summits around the state. So if you have not signed up and you're interested in attending, please let us know. We'd love to have you there.
Ashley, I'm starting to think just you and I are the only ones who have a microphone this morning. Okay, well, if nobody else has anything to raise, I will let you all go back to your exciting day jobs and have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy your Friday, and we'll talk to you all soon.